Ever since joining the UFC in late 2017, Song Yadong has treated us to some nasty knockouts, carrying considerable power for a bantamweight. Always looking to go up the division, this young fighter, like many others, shows a few holes in his game, but always brings the heat, putting on many exciting performances. Currently ranked number 8, he faces Ricky Simon this weekend, and hopefully after this video, we'll have a better understanding of Song Yadong, maybe even have a better idea of the fight we're going to see this weekend, as well as his future in the UFC. Coming into the UFC, Song made a statement by dropping his opponent and submitting him, showing athleticism, power, and versatility. His next fight ended via a nasty elbow, knocking his opponent out cold. It was immediately clear how powerful Song was. His opponents had to respect him or the lights would go out. Of course, power alone is not enough to win fights, but either way, bantamweight was put on notice by Song Yadong. If we're honest about his debut, it's not the most technical strike in the world. Windmill punches are all too common in the UFC, and they can be some of the least effective strikes, especially in the lower weight classes. Nonetheless, Song's power and athleticism overshadow his lack of technique, and his opponent didn't know what hit him. Song also shows his submission ability in his debut, further showing he's more than just a striker. In a way, his UFC debut is just about as good as it gets. Although he still throws overhands even today, they've become a lot more tidy and there's less of an arc or windmill than before. There's a small telegraph, but often it's only visible in the slow motion replay after his opponent has already been knocked out. In MMA, overhands appear to have more success than in sports like boxing and kickboxing, where straight punches are almost always the better alternative. This could be because of the threat of the takedown. Fighters drop their weight as if to shoot, then throw the right over the top. It could also be because of the less effective high guard in MMA. Gloves are smaller and don't cover up as much. The overhand right is one of Song's favourite strikes, but as he makes his way up the division, crafty strikers like Corey Sandhagen can use elusive movement to avoid him, and I will go over this fight in more detail later on. Song's journey up the rankings has not been a straight line, but even in losses, he still proved to be a worthy adversary. He was never flatlined or taken down and submitted. In every fight, win or lose, he showed up and he threw hands. We saw improvements in him along the road. Our young fighter began to pick up crafty tricks and held his own against steeper and steeper competition. One of the things that stands out to me is how accurate and composed he is inside of exchanges. We see many fighters get into a scrap and immediately start throwing accuracy and timing out the window. Song always appears to remain measured and line up his shots, even in those firefight situations. And I think his fight with Marlon Moraes is a great example of this. When the two fighters close distance to throw shots, amidst the fire, Song picks up on something Moraes does and then exploits it in a way that wins him the fight later on. As you can see here, an exchange occurs where they're both, throwing right hands, and Song notices that Marlon ducks his head, and he's going to use that later on. And then when they exchange again, Song, knowing that Marlon is going to duck his head, times a really nice uppercut. And this kind of shows what I mean about how, even when they're exchanging and throwing big punches, he's composed enough to make a read, which ends up winning him the fight with the really nice uppercut. In his fight with Corey Sandhagen, Song shows a great ability to defend takedowns as well. He's excellent at springing right back to his feet, kind of like Robert Whittaker does. The bantamweight division contains many strikers, but the X factor that champion Aljamain Sterling possesses is his slick grappling. Being able to defend takedowns, get up from the ground, and even reverse positions, these are great skills to have, and it makes a potential matchup with Alja down the line very interesting to think about. But back to the Sandhagen fight. It's Song's most recent fight, the most up-to-date version of him we have. So let's take a deeper look into the fight itself. The fight starts competitive, with Corey landing to the body and Song reversing a takedown attempt and even landing a hook that stuns Corey, something very few people have been able to do. There are multiple times in the fight where Song will duck under the left hand of Corey, something that I think his camp have picked up on when watching tapes of Corey. It's evident that Song's main strengths definitely lie in his boxing. Throughout the fight he shows an ability to blend a high guard with head movement to avoid shots, and his main method of attack was to punch. Since Corey is a long-rangey fighter, Song blends the lead hook with the jab, almost creating a hybrid strike that carries power but also reaches Corey, and this is how he ends up hurting Corey in the fight. There are a couple times in the fight where Corey tries to set up a trap using his hands, but Song is wise to it. Song would take every opportunity to hand fight with Corey, which was the main thing preventing the traps from being set. Hand fighting almost exclusively occurs when both fighters are in opposite stances, due to both lead hands naturally being closer to each other. But in spite of this, Song would make a point to hand fight even when they were both orthodox, which I think shows that Song came to the fight having studied Corey, knowing that Corey was going to try and set traps using his hands. Song's blend of head movement and high guarding was great for boxing defense, but it created an opening for the southpaw body kick, something which both Corey and Chito Vera took advantage of. Corey landed this kick cleanly multiple times in the fight, and while it doesn't visibly hurt Song too much, he still needs to address this in future fights. Song Yadong definitely has success fighting one of the top bantamweights in the world, but I think I've identified his main weakness, the main part of his game that's preventing him from being able to become the best fighter at 135. Song has great power for bantamweight, blinding speed, and some crafty grappling, but his footwork is what really lets him down. In a lot of the fights where Song loses, it's due to his opponents using elusive footwork to circle the fence and avoid his punches. This was on full display against Corey, as all throughout the fight Song had one method of closing distance: plodding forward. This may work fine against equally plodding fighters, or fighters that like to go first in exchanges, but against a crafty fighter like Corey, no chance. If he wants to climb the division and beat the top people like Sean O'Malley, Corey Sandhagen, even Sterling, he needs to work on his footwork, because just walking forward isn't going to work. In his fight with Corey, when he plods forward, it allows Corey to just circle around and then set up kicks. And especially when you're fighting long-rangey fighters who want to use their kicks, you can't just walk forward because it's not going to work. The thing that I think is really going to propel Song Yadong is learning to kind of cut off angles and learning to prevent his opponents from circling, because if he can cut off his opponents, they have to stand in front of him, and that's where he does his best work, in the close range exchanges. This is kind of why I think that Song Yadong's footwork is the biggest thing that's stopping him from becoming the top guy at 135. He doesn't even really need to, have these like long range attacks, because if he can learn to cut off people with his footwork, then they're right in front of him and he can land his big punches. So that's what I think about Song Yadong. He is fighting next week. He's fighting his second main event against Ricky Simon. So let's look at that fight. So both people have power. Ricky Simon, he likes to go first in exchanges, and he's got kind of bouncy footwork. I wouldn't say it's as elusive as someone like Corey. So in a way that does match up better for Song Yadong. What I think is going to happen in the fight is Ricky is going to he's going to be moving more, but he's also going to be the one that's closing distance. And I think when the exchanges happen, I think as more and more happen, Song Yadong is going to start picking up on reads, kind of like he did with Marlon Moraes. And I think that's bad for Ricky. Ricky himself, he's also quite compact and powerful for the division, but I think in exchanges he's going to get outgunned by Song Yadong. So I do think Song's going to win the fight. I reckon it's going to be like a TKO, maybe sort of midway through the fight, maybe round 3 or 4. I think as more and more of the exchanges happen, I think Song's going to get more and more reads, and he's just going to keep on setting up punches. The fight card itself isn't great, but this fight wasn't supposed to be the main event. It was supposed to be the co-main event last week, but now it's the main event. And like I said, the card isn't great, but I do think that this fight is going to be good. I think there's going to be a lot of power thrown, and yeah, my official pick, I'm going to go with Song Yadong. But yeah, that's my video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you maybe learned something about Song Yadong, something about fighting in general. Yeah, thank you for watching. Leave a comment if you got something to say. I'm thinking about doing a podcast. So, yeah. Bye.